Good evening, everyone. It's Pastor Wes, ready to bring you another life-changing word. Welcome to What the Church Could Be. Of course, it's Thursday night. It's not your traditional Bible study. We go along and go about 25, 30 minutes is what we do, and just really challenge ourselves to love better and to see God as love. That is the main purpose of Thursday night. It has been our focus. In the future, it may change as God leads, but our main focus right now is how do we love better? Jesus talked about we as disciples over in John 13, verse 34 and 35. He gave us a new commandment to love people as we have seen him love. And the other side of it, we would be known as disciples by how well we treat each other. And that is our focus. Our focus is not always to make sure we have the biggest faith, the biggest giving, the biggest rituals of religion is what that is, even though those can have value to them, they have a place. But that's not the number one priority. The number one priority is, how do I love humanity better? I want to leave this world better than I found it. So that's what we focus on. And we've been talking about the destructiveness of hate. On Thursday night, this is part 3. We're about to kick this off on Saturday, is what we're also about to do. And then, of course, Sunday, I'll get over into this because I want to really make sure this is a culture in our church, a mindset in our church, not to just be people that are free from hate, but to be anti-hate. And that's not anti-people, it's anti-hatred, though. We want to be people known for our love. Now, as you guys have already heard, man, we are so excited. We finally got to the closing. We purchased our building. We're already starting the opening process. We are looking tentatively to start opening at September the 20th is what that is. It gives us about, in total, it's given us close to 6 weeks to get the church open. We have a lot to do, a lot of good stuff to do, though. We've been securing the building. We've been getting utilities and power on. We've been cleaning up the buildings, what we do. We got to move in all our stuff and get it all set up in our equipment and just make sure everything's ready, just for you to have a good experience. Now, I'm encouraging people, since we're in this new phase of our church, it's no longer, hey, we're pursuing buying a building, we're pursuing God believing for a building. No, right now our focus is, because God has already done that, let's apply our faith to the next area, which is upgrades to the building is what we're wanting to do, and our outreach season, which is coming up. Thank you all for the back to school giving that was done that allowed us to purchase the backpacks. We're so excited to do that. If you, I believe there's still time to, let me make sure I'm giving you the right information here. I believe there is still time. I normally don't take this much for announcement, but I believe these are important, especially while we're virtual. There's time for volunteering still. If the spots are not already filled, we're going to be giving out the backpacks next week. So thank you guys that have already signed up for that. It's going to be really good. We go into the Bronx is what we do. We go into our shelters. Of course, our church is now in the Bronx. So we really intentionally, we're focusing on outreach in the Bronx. What's close proximity to the church, just so we can be a lighthouse in our community is what we want to be. So you can still do that. We thank you for that. The other way to get involved with opening our church, there's costs associated with that. We're wanting to upgrade things also. We want to upgrade our heating and air system. We're wanting to upgrade, and realize I'm saying upgrades because things aren't like we didn't buy a broken building. We just bought areas we want to continue to grow and improve on and be good stewards. So there's also a lot of the little things I'm not mentioning yet. But our main faith goals are we want to upgrade our heating and air unit. We'll upgrade the roofing system and drainage system in the church. We want to upgrade the bathrooms. We want to upgrade our chairs. And we want to upgrade our children's church. There are many other projects, but those are the main 5 we're kind of focusing on first is what I want to focus on. So if you want to get involved with that, man, pray about it, whatever God tells you to do. Your giving is needed, but it is also appreciated. And I'm not ashamed to say it is needed. This is what it takes for the church to go on and us to do our outreach. We, of course, always tell people to be wise in their giving, do what only God puts in their heart, and don't give something you have. Don't throw in next month's rent. We tell people all the time. But you guys know what to do. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to pray, and we're going to get into this message. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight to just acknowledge your spirit that is working in us already, and we receive it. Father, I admit I need you to order my steps, to articulate my words. May it be a revelation from you about you that points people back to you ultimately because they need you. May it be an on-time word that is relevant and empowering to your people. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, Destructiveness of Hate for Thursday night. This is part 3 we're getting into. So tonight we're going to do a brief recap of the definition of hate to make sure everybody's on the same page. I'm going to give you some scriptures, some new scriptures that talks about that surrounds about instructions and wisdom about hate is what we're going to do. And then we're going to talk about why do we hate. I got some, I'm going to do a lot of reading from a psychological excerpt I pulled from. And then at the end of that excerpt, we'll start in the process, and this will carry on to next week, 9 reasons why we hate. So we can recognize it and recognize how to deal with it, and also keep our heart free from it. Because why is this so important? It's easy to say as a Christian, well, I don't hate. Christians can be some of the most hateful people walking on the earth. So just because you're would call yourself born again or filled with the Spirit or any of those things doesn't mean you aren't a hateful person, because the air we breathe is full of hate. Because when you understand what's behind hate, which is ultimately a lot of fear, the more fear you have in life, the more potential you are and prone to hatred towards people, in which hatred can come out in passive aggressiveness, microtones. It can come out in various different ways is what it can do. And we'll cover some of those, how it can come out. It's not always the big blaring, I'm unleashing the fullness and unveiling the fullness of my hatred on a level of 10. Sometimes it's just the little things. But if we deal with it while it's little, it never becomes the big thing. Okay. Let me read this passage from Martin Luther King. This is part of our recap. We've been reading. He first delivered these words in his 1967 sermon. Where do we go from here? He also wrote a book about this. So let's read it real quick. And it says, "And I say to you, I have also decided to stick with love, for I know that love is ultimately the only answer to humankind's problems. And I'm going to talk about it everywhere I go. I know it isn't popular to talk about in some circles today. And I'm not talking about the emotional bosh when I talk about love. I'm talking about a strong, demanding love. For I have seen too much hate, and I say to myself that hate is too great of a burden to bear. I have decided to love. If you are seeking the highest good, I think you can find it through love. And the beautiful thing is we aren't moving wrong when we do it, because John was right, the Apostle John. God is love. He who hates does not know God, but he who loves has the key that unlocks the door to meaning of ultimate reality." Now, some powerful things there. We've read this over and over. I'll let you resonate that in yourself. But one, he made a quality decision to stick with love, even when it wasn't popular. So he also said this, I love, it's not emotional bosh when I talk about love. It's just not the gooey, feely love. No, it's a love that is strong in demanding love. What is it demanding? It's demanding a standard. Hey, I want to love. I mean, think about what all Martin Luther King Jr. was dealing with at that time, the racial inequality, the discrimination, which is still happening today, by the way. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not as loud as some people would say it was back then, but it still continues to happen. Because as long as humanity is on the earth, we will have to take a stance at resisting hatred. That's always going to be there. So we have to actively say, well, we defeat hatred and it's all over with. No, as long as there's human beings and conflict and things like that, hatred will always exist. It's what we choose to do when hatred shows up on our doorstep. So let's give the definition of hate real quick. Hate is, and I won't go through all the definitions we went through in the past couple weeks here, but let's start this. Hate is intense motion, extreme dislike, hostility, or aversion. It typically stems from fear, anger, a sense of injury, or unchecked bias. Catch that. It typically stems from fear, anger, a sense of injury. Instead of sense of injury, sometimes that sense of injury is perceived inaccurate. Sometimes it is correct. Either way, you have to know and take the time to say, is this injury true or not? Because sometimes you can hate somebody because you feel you were wronged when you weren't really wronged. Now, sometimes it can be there because, oh man, they really did wrong me. Well, then what do you do in that moment? Well, when hate shows up, the opportunity to hate shows up. Because that's what I'm saying. It's not that we are always, I'm a hateful person. Sometimes just the opportunity, just like the opportunity to fear shows up. The opportunity for anxiety or worry shows up. The opportunity for doubt shows up. What do we do in those moments? The opportunity to be in unforgiveness shows up. What do? We don't villainize ourselves. We deal with it and we learn how to respond to it in a healthy way. So that's what I'm talking about, hate. So yeah, a sense of injury, making sure we check the facts. And then if the facts happen to be true, okay, how do I respond from that in a place of, love and forgiveness, setting up healthy boundaries if that needs to be, having a hard conversation if that needs to be. It doesn't mean I'm a doormat, but I don't go to the other extreme of hatred. All right, let's keep moving. Well, it's like, how do you deal with that a little more? Let me not rush through that. Empathy is a big deal. Empathy is a huge thing to start the process, even moving towards forgiveness, and not assuming the why. Oh, well, they did that because they're just an evil person. That could be true, but is that fact or reality, or is that you're so hurt you can't see that? They were just having a bad day. They made a mistake. They're working through their own character flaw. That doesn't make it right. None of this is you're not trying to arrive at, oh, well, in some way I can just wash it off because either I was wrong or they were right, or none of that. It's not about that. You can call it for what it is. What you're trying to do is get you to a place where you can release it and heal from it and not let it make you bitter. And you can arrive at forgiveness. And like I said, that forgiveness can lead towards restoration of the relationship, or it could lead to termination of the relationship, to be honest. It's not saying you have to have fellowship with this person automatically. It's about releasing it internally so it doesn't make you sick, because that's what this stuff will do. All right, let me keep moving here. Key points on hate. Hate is not an emotion, but a learned response fueled by fear, anger, and stress. It flourishes on, so it's not boiled down to just the simple emotion I feel hate. It's also learned. It's a way of thinking is what it's pointing out. It's fueled, it's fuel in your mind. That's the reason mind renewal is so important. It's fueled with fear, it's fueled with anger, it's fueled with stress, or the perceived injury is what it is. It flourishes on division, misinformation, social conditioning, yet it can be unlearned. Replacing hate with understanding requires empathy, education, and open dialogue. Those are some of the remedies when you start feeling hate. Let's go to some scriptures. Proverbs 10, verse 12. Proverbs 10, verse 12 from the NLT. Hatred stirs up quarrels or fights, but love makes up for all the offenses. That's why love is always greater. Matthew 5, 43 through 47 says, you have learned the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. For he gives the sunlight both to the evil and to the good. He sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. And if you only love those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that much. If you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even pagans do that. It's important to recognize what he's showing is, first of all, he is also showing the nature of God, because we tend, especially as religious people, to want to curse people and say God's going to get you and God's going to do that. And Jesus is saying God's not in that business. God is capable of sending rain on the good and the bad. And I mean rain in a good way, to nourish and especially if a lot of Jesus' stories were about, or analogies were about farming. So we're talking about raining on crops also as that. The sun rises on everybody. Imagine if the sun only showed up for the good people and not the bad people. And you only have the warmth and the need. Also, we need the sun to warm us, by the way, or we would freeze to death, literally. So he's saying God doesn't just someone is having issues, is evil, has a bad person. God doesn't just cut them off, shut it down, and start treating them horrible. And that doesn't mean, like I said, people have a hard time when it comes to, yes, that is God, and God is capable of this. As humans, we may need to set boundaries. But those boundaries should never lead us to a place of, and boundaries is saying what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. Not a rule is saying trying to tell somebody else what they're going to do. Well, you can't force them to follow the rule. You can set the rule, you can set the expectation, but you can't force them to follow it. Not in your day-to-day life anyways, when I say that. Boundaries, though, is saying, you know what? If you're going to treat me this way, I'm not showing up in this relationship. I'm not entertaining this argument. I'm not entering into this toxic place with you. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to let you stress me out. I'm not going to allow you. And it isn't trying to say, well, I'm going to make them stop doing that. No, you are going to take certain steps within yourself and certain behavior within yourself to say, you know what? I'm going to set boundaries on me of what my actions are going to be and not going to be. That's the important part of this. So that's another aspect when we talk that. So why did I make that point? Aligning back up with loving your enemy. I'm going to set a boundary where I'm not going to let your bad behavior turn me into a mean and bitter person. I'm still going to be kind is what I'm be. That's a boundary you're setting. I'm choosing, no matter how you act, I'm not going to drop down to your standard of mistreatment and abuse and toxicity. I'm still going to be kind. I'm still going to be forgiven. I'm still going to be loved because this is who I want to be. And I'm not going to let your bad behavior corrupt my good character. So you're seeing all these different things we're talking about. Let's go to 1 John 4:20. It says, if someone says, I love God, but hates his fellow believer, that person is a liar. For if we do not love people we can see, how can we love God whom we cannot see? It's a powerful statement. Getting to know God is important about loving people. And that's why it's so important. As a real reason I read that as a Christian, listen, I don't care how much you give. I don't care how much you show up at church. I don't care how much scripture you quote. I don't care how well you pray. I don't care. All these different things. In our church, our thing is, how well did you treat people? That's what we're looking for, because that is a Christ follower is what that is. Let's go to Romans 12:17 through 21. Romans 12:17 through 21 says, never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are an honorable person. Do all that you can do. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Do all that you can. That means you have to be a good steward and be faithful to say, I've done everything I can to live in peace with you. Now, some people you can't because they got to do their part. There is that level of it, but do all you can. You are committed to live in peace with everyone. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. Realize I said revenge. Revenge never gets anybody anywhere. And revenge is full of hatred, by the way. Leave the righteous anger of God. For the scripture says, I will take revenge, or I will repay. I will pay them back, says the Lord, instead. NLT does a horrible translation of that. It says simply, I will repay. What does it mean, I will repay? He's actually talking about not, I'm going to get them, because that doesn't line up with the nature of love. God is merciful. He's talking about, I'll repay you. I'll repay you for the damages. I'll repay you for the loss. I'll repay you for you were the bigger person in that moment. Even when they didn't show up, I'm going to make sure you're repaid for that. It's a spiritual principle you exercise is what you do. For the scriptures, let's say, instead, verse 20, instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their head. You know how it is when you get in that fight and all of a sudden you take the moment and be the bigger person, you apologize. And if that person has any consciousness about them, some people don't. Some people are further broken and it takes a lot more to change, for them to change. But a lot of times, the majority of times, not all the time, the majority of the times, you're the bigger person, you apologize, all of a sudden it disarms that person, and all of a sudden they're like, oh man, I can't believe I was a jerk to you. I've done that at times where I'm like, I'm sorry, man. Even if it wasn't really fully my fault, and I'm like, or I only played a small part and I'm owning that small part, and they're really the main person. Just me being the bigger person at that moment, a lot of times diffuses the situation, allows that person to shift their attitude, shift their perspective, drop their defenses, and we enter into a place of peace where we can start having the real conversation. We can even apologize to each other, and we can make better, healthier adjustments in our behavior towards each other. So those are powerful things. The last thing it says in verse 21, don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. We cannot let hate conquer us, but we conquer hate by love is what we do. So why do we hate? Let me get to the psychological part here a little bit more. And you're hearing me, of course, I'm saying this over and over. This whole summer I've been preaching on this and kind of fusing these two together, because I don't like when professions, we tend to fight with each other and we say, well, and try to discredit each other a lot instead of learning from each other and realize human beings are more complex, where we need to be approached in a holistic standpoint. And church doesn't need to, and vice versa. It's either side. Psychiatry should not fight religion, and religion should not be fighting psychiatry. They both play a place when they are put in their healthy context. Now, human beings weaponize them. Human beings hijack them. Human beings abuse them and manipulate them and use them to exploit people. But that doesn't make the system, not the system, but the principles in it, the spiritual principles, psychological principles, that doesn't make those bad. We want to challenge the application to make sure they're staying pure, but it doesn't make it bad. So let's get into this. Why do we hate? There's going to be a lot of reading is what this is going to be, just for about 5 minutes here. It says, if hate is an emotion, what is it? If hate isn't an emotion, what is it? At its core, hate is a response to fear. You hear that? Hate is a response to fear, stress, and anger. It is reinforced through experience, social pressure, and cultural narratives. Hate is not something we are born with. It is something we learn. Hope you hear that. That's why I said really our environment. We talk about, this is what bothers me when the preachers preach propaganda of boogeyman culture wars. I call boogeyman because boogeyman is a made-up figure, is what that is, to scare people into good. And they tend to say, we're coming for your kids. And you could fill in the blank. This is coming for your kids. I'm not going to go through the list. They come at the list. But they never tend to list anything that truly deals with hate. They never talk about really much how to deal with bullying. They never talk to how to deal with children being molested or trafficking. They ignore those things, is what that is, because also it brings a light and accountability to themselves as a church entity also, which we do in our church. That's the reason I bring these things up. So these things get reinforced through experience, social pressure, and culture and narratives. People use a lot of fear tactics to say, well, this group of people is coming for your kids. This group of people is coming for your kids. But if you fact check it in reality, they're not coming for your kids. There's other things that definitely are, but not the religious propaganda machine. There is things that are affecting our kids. Hatred is a big one. When you teach your kids to hate other groups because they're different and you don't agree with them, and all under the false label of your interpretation of sin that you cherry picked from the Bible, you're teaching our kids are going to learn hate. We're going to learn hate is what's going to happen, and that's more what I want to guard our kids from. I hope in our children's church, this is a goal of mine and Nicole's, is that we don't teach our kids to know all the Bible stories. That sounds really contradicting. We don't teach our kids to remember every book in the Bible and be able to say them out in order or quote scriptures. We don't teach our kids to, if we do teach, we don't overemphasize. That's not the priority. We don't teach our kids about as much as, I give out a religious duty or doing any of the religious practices. I hope we teach our kids, especially in our children's church, I hope we're teaching them the fruits of the Spirit. I hope we're teaching them 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 through 8, or actually verse 1 through 8, where Paul talked about, if I can pray all the mysteries and all this, but if I don't love, I just be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. I hope that's what we teach our kids more than ever. Hope we teach our kids the difference of kindness versus cruelty. Those are the things that are coming for our kids, is how to be cruel to other kids versus how to be kind. So all that different things. So let's keep going here. Fear plays a significant role. People often hate what they don't understand or perceive as a threat. This is why xenophobia and racial prejudice exist. The unfamiliar makes people uncomfortable. In that discomfort, hate is cultivated. Now, you could go a lot of groups, different religions, different sexual orientation groups, different, I already said religions, different religions, that can even be a thing. Just because we don't understand and we teach it as, this is the problem when you demonize everything. There's a difference because people are like, well, what about calling out sin? First of all, if that's what you jump to, you have bought into this delusional cult, is what you bought into, called false Christianity. You bought into the delusional cult, I'll say that. The only sin you need to deal with is the sin in yourself, because that's the only one you can control and deal with. And we teach in our church how to deal with that from a place of love, grace, and mercy, not shame, guilt, and condemnation. And when you learn how to do that, you are in a position to inspire others through your godly actions, and not calling out their sin, but inspiring by living a life and demonstrating a life. I don't need you to call out sin. I need you to demonstrate how to love and inspire people through your actions, is what that is. And when I say call out sin, remember, we just came off a series talking about judgmentalness. There's a difference in doing wise judgment and judgmentalness. Because here it is. You're like, Wes, you're calling out stuff. Yes, I am. I'm calling it out from a different way. It's like when it violates love your neighbor and you're mistreating someone, we do need to stand up and say, no, that is wrong, because we're not passive. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm trying to say is religion says it does that, but then you hear the list of things they're calling out and you realize it is rooted in heavy misinformation, heavy propaganda, heavy fear, heavy manipulative agenda is also behind it, to get people riled up through anger to want to give more money also, which I talk about often too. And you get people charged up in fear, and we got to pick up swords and we got to fight everybody is what we got to do. That's not calling out sin. That is raising up a cult of lunatics. And we've done that especially for the American church. If your first idea is to, go after all these people that are living in sin, boy, first of all, you need to look in the mirror. That was the whole point of the woman caught in adultery. Jesus called out the Pharisees, Sadducees, or the people that drug her in there, and said, you want to stone her to death for her sin. You want to call out her sin, but you hadn't dealt with any of yours. If you want to call out her sin to the point it needs to be stoned to death, get in line, because we're going to stone all of you to death, because all of you have some area of sin in your life that is just as much worthy of being stoned to death. And see, he called out the hypocrisy. Why am I talking about that? I did not leave my subject at hate. Hate is generated from this. Hate is generated from ego also. It is generated from pride, is what it is. Okay. Let's keep going through this reading. It's okay. I'll take my time. We'll just pick it up next week is what we do. So let's see. We got about several more minutes here. Stress and anger also fuel hate. When individuals feel powerless, overwhelmed, or frustrated, they search for someone or something to blame. Hate becomes a means to direct negative emotions outward. This is evident in scapegoating, where specific groups are held responsible for economic hardship, crime, or societal decline. This is a huge problem with our politics right now. It is always pointing the finger at someone else to say, this group of people is why your life sucks in this country. Vote for me and we'll get rid of them and I'll elevate you, which is a lie, because they never do it, by the way. But that is a hate banner, a hate propaganda, a hate political platform is what that is. And are you saying both sides do this? No, both sides don't equally do this. Right now, there is one side that is screaming this louder than ever, more than ever, and doing it under the name of the church. And as pastors, we gotta call that out. Like, if you believe one party is of God, you've missed everything about politics. There's no such thing as a party that represents God. Neither of them do. And we keep searching for that. And it's not saying we shouldn't search for good candidates, but typically in church world, I'll say it this way, we typically elevate conservative Christianity is what we call it, which is demonically wired. That is straight from hell. And then we demonize any form of progressive side, a left-leaning side. That's straight from hell too. Are you saying you should vote Democrat versus Republican? This and that? I'm saying, first of all, I'm calling out the church for what they're doing. If they were elevating the other side, if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd be calling it out the other way, but it's not. That's the other destructive side. Most of our preachers preach conservative Christianity because we get more tax breaks through that way, and less tax accountability laws are passed. They give us free passes. They loosen the laws on the church, and then we wonder why a preacher is constantly going to jail for stealing from their congregation. And that the machine does not like me saying that, honestly. People are like, that's not true, that's not true. You wouldn't know that as a member unless you're behind the curtain unless you actually run a church and you know all the tax laws, state and federal tax laws, and you're involved in this with the understanding, or you've gone to some law school, or you've even gone to a banker school, for example, because banks will tell you this when they try to give out loans and stuff like this. There is so much unchecked, unregulated financial regulation and accountability on the church. It is insane. And that has the number one reason why a preacher will tell you to vote a certain way, because one political party is pro that. One political party is more pro accountability. And that is the number one reason why today, why we have what we have. Of course, there was segregation. There was a lot of other things in the past that also had to deal with a lot of these different things. So these all generate hate, though. But if we don't do our investigation in what I'm talking about, and I had to do a lot of investigation as I had to start seeing why were we doing what we're doing. I had to start asking a lot of questions and say, are we just saying stuff to say stuff? Why are we really saying? Is there an agenda behind it? And you start seeing what is really up and down is what you do. All right, these are all avenues hate gets expressed, because people are like, I don't see the hate. Well, if you want to do this all the time, you're never going to see it, but you have to recognize it is there. The us versus them mentality, I talk about this all the time, fuels hatred. This is back to this whole multiple paragraphs we're hitting here. The us versus them mentality fuels hatred. Humans are inherently tribal. Hear this. Humans are inherently tribal, creating groups based on identity, race, nationality, religion, or ideology. And this is something I'll constantly fight to keep our church out of. We cannot become tribalists. We can be a village, a community that comes together and serves each other. There is nothing wrong with that. But the tribal aspect, what it's talking about here, tribal, is weaponized. It is my way or the highway, and to hell with everybody that doesn't agree with me. And I mean literal hell, is what we say. So this fosters, let me keep reading, this fosters the belief that our group is superior while viewing, hear that? It also always elevates that superior. Like, we have to, that's why, I won't get into all that. I teach in Christ very different. I teach I'm very careful how I teach our spiritual principles, because are we elevating to be better than somebody? Are we just elevating to be the best version of ourselves? And there is a very different way to go about that. Fosters belief that a group is superior while viewing their group as the enemy. Hatred deepens this divide, making it easier to rationalize discrimination and violence. That's why I've been avoiding some of the tough words, but because you hear me talking about, that's why I deal with the religious. Like, for example, we have a huge Islamophobia going on again. And that doesn't mean, when I say the Islamophobia is going on, that hatred towards the Jewish community isn't also happening at the same time. Semitism, being anti-Semitic. That isn't going on. That doesn't mean xenophobia isn't. Xenophobia is very loud. There's a lot of rhetoric coming from our current administration. And our country has, and people are like, oh, you're calling out the current president. Listen, our country has never in its entire history, under any blue, red, anything in between, ever had immigration correctly. Congress has never had it right. The Senate has never had it right. This nation, and other nations with it, because we can be so tribal, has never gotten immigration right. And that's why I talk about xenophobia. Xenophobia is rooted in a lot of misinformation. Oh, they're coming over here to take our jobs. Oh, they're coming over here because they're bringing all this criminal activity. Oh, they're doing that. Does that exist? Sure, but to the amplification of it, to the percentage that is being put and projected out there, to the point it is now a phobia, it is not rooted in information. Is there a factual percentage of that? Yes. Is there fact in the percentage that's being projected? No. And I think what people are having a hard time understanding while we're talking about this, and the reason I hit on this, because there's immigrants in our church. Most of our church, especially because it's New York City, man. People are like, well, it's because it's sanctuary. Dude, just say you hate people and your Christianity's worthless, is what I challenge you at that moment. It's because it is a place of immigrants. Most of even our members are first generation, second generation over is what that is. And they come here, when people are like, well, they just need to come, they do come here the right way. They are currently in the process of doing that. But never has it been so strong in many, many years of presidencies than it is now, where it is deliberately, intentionally trying to dismantle any pathway to citizenship. It is trying to make it financially harder. It is trying to make it unrealistically harder, where it is very, very clear. And the groups that are being targeted are not white European groups. They are people of color that are being targeted. And it has been going on for 2 plus years now. All this has been happening right now. This is not of God, and the church is buying in it, and they say, well, we're a nation of laws. No, man, no, we're not. We are not a nation of law and order. We never have been. We are a nation of selective law and order that is fueled by hatred, that is selectively applied to who we hate versus who we prefer. And that's when I have a trouble with a lot of these things. Okay, let me not go too far off that, but we brought it up. We're talking about nationalism, discrimination. The reason why, though, if we keep demonizing group, and the reason why I was talking about, for example, using immigration as an example, we don't mind when we see a child literally be killed by our federal government. We don't mind seeing citizens, which has happened, being gunned down because we have radicalized federal government that our taxpayer dollars are funding, by the way, right now. That's all in the name of hate. We don't see the continuously over money. People are like, man, this country's economy is crap. Well, if we quit over militarizing our nation with unnecessary tools to injure citizens at this point, we're not even talking about immigration, because half the time you're targeting people and you don't know their status before you target them. That's what's been happening. So even our own citizens have now been getting caught in the crossfire of this situation. And here's the thing, because we listen to the propaganda so much and we let the hatred get in us so much, we don't care. I have people on social media all the time. Oh, well, I'm glad they're in jail and getting beaten and getting tasered and getting shot and getting killed. They deserve it. Well, you are the darkest scum of humanity that has not experienced the light of love. And you can change from that, but it doesn't mean that that isn't happening. And I want to make sure we safeguard our church from that. And also, the reason I talk about these things, it's not saying you as the people that are listening to me are this. I want you to also understand that you have a church that sees you, that hears you, and that wants to be a safe place for you specifically in different areas also. So that's why we talk about those things. All right, I'm going to pause because I'm going over now. And I only got partway through this. So we talked about the us versus them mentality. I still got to go through this list. We didn't even get to the 9 different reasons why, but I still want to break this down because there's just a lot in it. We can keep going, we can keep going, we can keep going. But there's a lot of teaching that still has to be done in this, in the depths of it when we get understanding. So I'm going to close right there. I won't make any further announcements. I did all that at the top of the video is what it is. The stream is what I did. So good thing this is saved. Once it streams out, it archives. You can go back and watch it. As always, Nicole and I send our love. We send our blessings. Thank God for your lives. And man, hope you are all doing well. All right, I'll catch you Saturday virtually and Sunday. Trust me, we're getting closer to opening. I already gave you a tentative date. Keep an eye out for announcements. Catch you next week.